皆様、本日は公益財団法人笹川平和財団およびジョージタウン大学女性平和安全保障研究所主催、外務省講演シンポジウム WPS アジェンダ推進のための議員の役割にご参加いただきまして誠にありがとうございます。私、本日司会を務めます笹川平和財団第2グループ高澤陽子と申します。開会に先立ちまして皆様にご案内申し上げます。本イベントは事前にご登録いただいているメディア関係者の方々を除き、撮影、録画、録音することはできません。本日はお手元のレシーバーを介しまして同時通訳をご利用いただくことが可能となっております。お手元のレシーバーはチャンネル1が日本語、チャンネル2が英語となっております。会場内での喫煙はご遠慮くださいますようお願いいたします。携帯電話、スマートフォンは電源をお切りいただくか、マナーモードに設定いただき、音が鳴らないようにご配慮をお願いいたします。また、会場内での通話はご遠慮ください。最後に、本イベントの模様は後日、笹川平和財団の YouTube チャンネルで公開いたします。開会は16時半を予定しております。お席にて今しばらくお待ちください。 それでは定刻となりましたので始めさせていただきます。本日は大変お忙しい中、公益財団法人笹川平和財団およびジョージタウン大学女性平和安全保障研究所主催、外務省講演シンポジウム WPS アジェンダ推進のための議員の役割にご来場いただき誠にありがとうございます。まずはじめに開会のご挨拶を笹川平和財団第2グループ平和構築支援担当グループ長の中山真帆より申し上げます。中山グループ長、よろしくお願いいたします。
Honorable Roland Legardas, Senator, Senate of the Philippines. Honorable Mitsunari Okamoto, Member of Parliament of Japan. Honorable Olena Homenko, Member of Parliament of Ukraine. Honorable Liza Zajuri, Deputy Floor Leader of the Bangsamoro Transition Authority Parliament and Minister of Social Service and Development BARM. Honorable Meenakshi Lekshi, former Minister of State for Foreign Affairs and Culture. His Excellency Mr. Hirotaka Matsuo, Ambassador in charge of UN Affairs. Her Excellency Ambassador Melan Berbia, Executive Director of Georgetown Institute for Women, Peace and Security, and Advisory Committee member of SBS USA. Excellency, distinguished guests and delegates, ladies and gentlemen. It is such an honor for me to speak to you at this public event entitled The Role of Parliamentarians for the Advancement of WPS Agenda. Representing the Sasakawa Peace Foundations, I would like to express our deepest gratitude to our co-organizer, Georgetown Institute for Women and Peace and Security, and Ambassador Berbia for all your guidance in every step of preparations to realize this event. Also, we would like to thank our panelists, trailblazer and champion of WPS agenda, who agreed to talk today to share their admirable work in their countries to advance the core principles of WPS agenda. Our appreciation goes to Ambassador Hirotaka Matsuo and Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Mainstreaming Division of Foreign Policy Bureau, to provide us with such an invaluable opportunity and help us to organize this side event at this very critical timing when a gathering of high-level officials in charge of WPS agenda from across the world, the Focal Point Network meeting takes place in Tokyo with co-chairs of Japanese and Norwegian governments. The Sasakawa Peace Foundations became interested in the work of promoting WPS agenda from our field experiences in conflict area in Southeast Asia, where women shoulder all the burdens without men going for warfare, yet they rarely being involved in any policy discussion or decision-making processes on peace and conflict, yet once they are given opportunity to do so, the impact of their participation is huge. Such an experience and recognition brought us to be involved and work for advancement of WPS agenda at local, national, and global level. And now on the issue of role of parliamentarians, as we developed our program, we had the opportunity to work with our former foreign minister, Honorable Yoko Kamikawa, and the WPS Parliamentarians Network Japan, established in December 2022. We were extremely fortunate to be their international alliance partner, together with Georgetown Institute for Women, Peace and Security. And from their work, we learned so much, and we were so inspired by honorable parliamentarians in Japan who made concrete changes and progresses during a very limited time, which I think will be explained by Honorable Mitsunari Okamoto during our high-level panel. Parliamentarians have a critical role in mainstreaming gender in peace and security issues, as they are in a unique position to legislate enforceable measures for the realization of WPS agenda, ensuring necessary budget and resources, exercising oversight and monitoring, and even representing conflict and war-affected women and communities. We are very pleased to have the most suited speakers today. 5 outstanding parliamentarians who pursue this very important cause. We very much look forward to directly listening to them on the groundbreaking work they have done to enhance women's decision-making in peace and security, to prevent violence against women, or found framework for budgetary allocation for gender and development. We hope today's symposium will stimulate more interest and discussion and will serve as an opportunity to promote future collaboration, alignment at many different sectors and levels. Thank you so much.
ありがとうございました。続きまして、本シンポジウムの共同主催者であるジョージタウン大学女性平和安全保障研究所所長メラン・バービア大使より開会のご挨拶および本シンポジウムのイントロダクションをいただき、そのままプログラムの司会進行もお願いしたいと思います。バービア大使、よろしくお願いいたします。アンバサダーバービア。
Well, thank you so much, Yoko, and welcome to each and every one of our distinguished panelists, as well as our extraordinary audience that's with us today. I want to add my welcome to Mahos to this high-level discussion on the role of parliamentarians in the advancement of women, peace, and security, and the agenda and framework that represents. We at the Georgetown Institute for Women, Peace, and Security are very pleased to be able to partner with Sasakawa Peace Foundation on this event, as well as the Foreign Ministry of Japan. And I must say, for me, it is a distinct personal pleasure to be back here at the Sasakawa Peace Foundation. We have done so much work together over the last couple of years, and this place is leading in many, many ways on peace building that you heard from Maho, just extraordinary work in the field, making such an incredible difference and educating us all in the process. The focus on peace and security could not be more timely. As all of us knows, our world is enveloped in crises. It's a turbulent time, an unprecedented time in many ways, with wars going on from Ukraine to Sudan, from Myanmar to the Middle East, and so many places in between. So these issues are extremely timely, of which we are speaking. It is also appropriate that we come together on the sidelines of the UN's Focal Point Network summit that just concluded yesterday afternoon. It is a time that brought together many leaders in government and civil society to really work on how we can better extend through the framework of WPS the strengthening of peace and security around the world. And it is a proud moment to have Japan as the co-chair of the Focal Points Network, as well as Norway. So it has been a very time of leadership for this country on this issue. Parliamentarians have a critical role to play in the implementation of the Women, Peace, and Security framework and the goals of enhancing peace and security. Legislators have the power to ensure funding levels and the provision of other critical resources, to provide monitoring and oversight of government decision-making in this area, to influence legislation and the direction of foreign assistance, humanitarian assistance, and the integration of WPS into the foreign policy relating to addressing specific conflicts as well as partnerships with other governments around the world. As you will learn from our panelists, and I can tell you having met them and absorbed their biographies, knowing some of them personally. They're an extraordinary group. They can also have been involved, as you will hear, in targeting and legislating on matters of gender equality, for example. And we know, both from research and from experience, that the well-being of women and the protection of their rights and opportunities directly correlates with the peace and prosperity of a nation. I also hope that out of this discussion on the role of parliamentarians, we will together begin to pave the way for the role of parliamentarians in other places to be much more engaged on this framework. Japan and the United States, for example, are the only two countries in the world that have a parliamentary network, a caucus, if you will, focused on these issues. And I think it would strengthen the goals that all of us share on peace and security to see parliamentarians much more engaged, and they have been engaged, as you will hear from those who are with us today, but ways to formalize and work more closely together. But first, let me introduce Mr. Christian de Jesus. He is the Deputy Chief of Mission at the Philippine Embassy here in Tokyo. He is going to bring to us a message from the Honorable Lauren Lagarde. She is a member of the Philippine Senate, where she has been the first female Senate President pro tempore, a renowned environmentalist. She is globally recognized for her work on climate change, action, and disaster resilience. And we all know that climate change is a growing security threat in the world. Her legislative achievements include the landmark Climate Change Act and Renewable Energy Act in her country. She wanted to be with us. She is unable to be with us. So her emissary is here to bring us her message and explain the work that is so vital to what she as a parliamentarian has been doing in this space. So Mr. de Jesus, if you can come up, and then if our panelists can also come up at the same time, we will begin the program.
Excellencies, distinguished panelists, honorable guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to deliver this speech on behalf of Philippine Senator Lauren Lagarde. The role of parliamentarians for advancement of the WPS agenda. Honorable colleagues and distinguished guests, it is an honor to join you today to discuss the vital role of parliamentarians in advancing the women, peace, and security agenda. Across the world, conflict and instability have escalated at an alarming rate, showing no mercy. In 2023, over 170 armed conflicts raged on, forcing 612 million women and girls to live within 50 kilometers of violence, a 50% increase compared to a decade ago. The proportion of women killed in armed conflicts has doubled, and their displacement has surged by 70% in the past 5 years. 1 in every 2 women in conflict zones faces food insecurity, while thousands of girls are denied their right to education as schools become battlegrounds. Yet, despite carrying the heaviest burdens, women are too often locked out of the rooms where their futures are decided. This cycle is within our hands to break. Women's participation in peace processes is not just about representation, but the foundation of sustainable peace. And yet, in 2023, women accounted for only 9.6% of negotiators and 1.5% of peace agreement signatories. This is why we, as parliamentarians, cannot be passive witnesses. Our role as policymakers is to bridge the gap between vision and action. In the Philippines, we have made strides by embedding WPS principles in our legal framework. On our path to peace, the Bangsa-Moro Organic Law, which created an autonomous region in Muslim Mindanao, institutionalizes women's participation in all decision-making and policy-determining bodies of the Bangsa-Moro government, recognizing their critical role in post-conflict stabilization and regional development. Our Anti-Trafficking in Persons Act, the first of its kind in Southeast Asia, and its expanded version, a landmark law I championed, stands as a shield against exploitation, protecting the most vulnerable, especially women and children, and affirming human dignity as non-negotiable. As a four-term senator, my lifelong advocacy for climate resilience has also reinforced WPS principles within national policies on disaster preparedness, sustainable development, and community security. Through the Climate Change Act of 2009, which I authored and sponsored, we ensure that women are not only consulted, but represented in climate governance, recognizing that in the face of climate-driven conflicts and displacement, women's leadership is a necessity. But our progress must not lull us into complacency. Globally, national action plans on WPS remain severely underfunded. The Philippine Magna Carta of Women, which I authored, mandates that no less than 5% of all government budgets be allocated to gender and development programs. This ensures that women actively participate in policy formulation, governance, and peace building at the national, regional, and local levels. This approach has been instrumental in making the Philippines a regional leader in gender equality. This is why we must not only legislate, we must finance, monitor, and enforce. Without these pillars, WPS risks remaining a symbolic aspiration rather than an operational imperative, collapsing under the weight of its own exclusions. Looking ahead, the challenge is no longer about recognizing the importance of women in peace building, because this is already an established truth. The real challenge lies in our courage to disrupt entrenched structures that continue to silence women in conflict resolution, governance, and security institutions. Dear colleagues, this is not a question of capacity. The expertise, resources, and frameworks to implement WPS already exist. What we need is bold, unyielding, political will that prioritizes gender-inclusive peace building even when it challenges established hierarchies. And so, our work ahead is clear. We must institutionalize accountability mechanisms that embed WPS principles in every facet of governance through binding legislation, gender-responsive budgeting, and rigorous oversight. We must transform political will into concrete outcomes by integrating WPS indicators into national security strategies, peace agreements, and post-conflict recovery frameworks. This, my dear colleagues, is not a concession, but the very foundation of sustainable peace, where justice, inclusion, and equity are not ideals, but realities. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and please convey our thanks to the Senator. I think those were very appropriate words to open up our discussion with our distinguished panel. I'm going to turn first to the Honorable Mitsunari Akamoto, who is a member of the House of Representatives here in Japan. He was elected 5 times and representing Tokyo's Adachi and Arakawa wards. He currently serves as the chairman of the Policy Research Council of the Komeito Party. Welcome, sir. It's so appropriate to have you with us for this discussion. Let me start by asking about this parliamentary network on WPS women, peace, and security. We've had long days here.
Right.
On WPS and what the Parliamentary Caucus, the network, is doing here in Tokyo, what difference it's made, and how you see the importance of its work.
Thank you so much, Ambassador. First of all, I'd like to congratulate the organizers, Madam Ambassador Vivier, and the Georgetown Institute for Women, Peace and Security, and Sasakawa Peace Foundation on realization of this symposium, held at very important timing. We all know that this year marks 25th anniversary UN Security Council Resolution 1325, a historic. I'm afraid. Oh, that sounds good, but let me keep this. I am also aware that this symposium takes place at the critical timing when an important gathering of policymakers working for WPS agenda called Focal Point Network is held, co-chaired by Japanese and Norwegian governments. I feel honored to take part in this symposium and talk to you who are working across the world to build more peaceful and gender equal world. WPS Parliamentarians Network Japan was established in December 2022 based on deep recognition of the importance of this agenda and role of parliamentarians. Now we have a cross-party membership of 37 parliamentarians, and we are proud, we are very much proud that 1/3 of members are male, including myself. Even before our network was built, Japan already adopted the National Action Plan. However, concept of WPS had not received much attention in Japan yet. Our network worked to change such an environment. Right after the establishment, we submitted proposal to then the Prime Minister of Japan to make continuous effort to implement Japanese third National Action Plan. And also, we showed Japanese leadership to advance WPS agenda. For G7 meeting in Hiroshima in 2023, WPS agenda was included in the communique coming out from the G7 summit in Hiroshima. We organized WPS dialogue more than 10 times to deepen policy discussion and learned from the advanced countries with rich experiences and implementing this agenda. Based on the knowledge gained from the WPS dialogue, we have compiled the 5 rounds of recommendations and submitted them to the ministers of Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Defense and other ministries. The proposal strongly urged the government of Japan to move forward and led to one of the major achievements, the inclusion of WPS in the basic policy on economic and fiscal management reforms, which provided the financial basis of the government efforts on WPS. This outcome shows that strategic efforts of us, parliamentarians, have influenced on the policy at the higher level. This is kindly prepared by the Ministry of International Affairs for me, but I really feel that Japanese politicians, including myself, have to pay much attention, not in depth, but in the broader range. One of my friends, Nakagawa-san, told me that ruling parties haven't invited the many politicians from the opposition parties, and that's not true. But we have paid much attention to broaden our network, including your friends. So let me try on that. Thanks a lot.
Well, thank you very, very much. And we'll come back to the parliamentarian after we have some questions and introductions of the other panelists. And then we're going to turn to the audience at the end for questions as well, so please prepare for that. We turn now to the Honorable Olena Komenko, who since 2019 has been a member of Ukraine's parliament, which is known as the Verkhovna Rada. She serves on the Committee on National Security, Defense, and Intelligence, where she chairs the Subcommittee on Defense Procurement, a very big, challenging issue. Additionally, and very importantly, she is a member of the permanent delegation to the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe, and in fact came from Strasbourg directly here to Tokyo. We are so fortunate to have you with us, Elena. We know what's happening in Ukraine, this unprovoked aggression that Russia has perpetrated on the country. As you go into the third year of the full-scale war, just in a few days from now. But we know that that war actually began in 2014, and the full-scale war has now taken its toll for the last 3 years. So let me ask you, how do you incorporate a gender lens, the role of women, for example, into your work as a legislator, and particularly as a committee member on national security? How do you make this fit, and why is it important?
Thank you, Ms. Ambassador. Hello to everyone. I'm glad to be here today. And throughout history, war has led to shifts in gender roles, particularly for women. And so apparently it happened to Ukrainian women. I myself had a chance to feel this shift on the first day of Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. As I remember now, it was February 24, with explosions in Kiev started at 5 a.m. and with the meeting of Verkhovna Rada at 7 a.m. when we all parliamentarians gathered to vote for martial law. After the vote, all parliamentarians received weapons regardless of their gender. So after receiving our weapons, my colleague Saya and I went through the center of Kiev with assault rifles across our shoulders and handguns in our bags. For the first in my life, express training on how to use weapons. Today, every Ukrainian woman feels this shift, playing a crucial role in ensuring security and peace. Ukrainian women serve in the armed forces of Ukraine, lead humanitarian initiatives, volunteer, support the affected, and actively participate in reconstruction. The task of the task of parliamentarians, is to ensure the protection of Ukrainian women, equal opportunities and influence on decision-making process. For instance, today about 70,000 women serve in the armed forces, with 48,000 of them in active military roles. This number is higher than in some European countries, and 10,000 of women deployed in active combat zones. I met those women in front lines. I was asking them, what did motivate you to join armed forces? And they were telling their stories. Some of them lost their loved ones. Some of them wanted to be close to their loved ones. And all of them wanted to bring victory and peace in Ukraine. When I asked some of them whether they were going to leave and come back home, they said, no, I will be staying here till the very end. I will not be able, I don't have the right, I don't feel that I want to leave the battlefield and go home. And Ukrainian legislation already ensures that women can attain military ranks on equal footing with men, a step that challenges deep-seated stereotypes and strengthens operational effectiveness. But we also must guarantee the participation of women in command positions and in peace negotiations. Yet quality is not just about military rank, it is about conditions of service. While women in uniform proving their strengths on the battlefield, our responsibility as lawmakers is to ensure that they have the legal protections, equal opportunities, and resources they need to serve in the army effectively. For instance, Ukrainian government approved new measures to ensure gender equality in the military, including the provision of specialized protective gear and hygiene supplies tailored to women's needs. For the first time, military healthcare regulations guarantee gynecological, mammological, and psychological support for women alongside mental health program tailored for all soldiers who have endured combat stress or sexual violence from Russian forces. These reforms mark a significant step towards true gender inclusion in defense. Another major issue in Ukraine today is gender-based violence, including conflict-related sexual violence, which is one of the most horrifying weapons Russia is using against Ukraine, and numbers are devastating. According to the Office of Prosecutor General, since the beginning of Russia's full-scale invasion, prosecutors have recorded 339 cases of conflict-related sexual violence by the Russian military. As the end of the 2024, 217 of them are women, 16 of whom are minors. Women and children are particularly at risk in the temporarily occupied territories by Russia. And last week I chaired the meeting on of the PACE Parliamentary Network on the situation of Ukrainian children that was recently established in the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe. And this meeting was dedicated to the situation of children in temporarily occupied territories. During the meeting, we heard the testimonies of a returned teenage girl and the psychologist working with returned children. And the girl testified about psychological pressure from the occupation authorities, and psychologists noted that returned girls regularly testify that while they were in the temporarily occupied territories, they were afraid of even leaving the house because of the threat of being raped by Russian military. No child, no woman, no person should live with this fear. Yet this is the brutal reality that Ukrainian women and children endure. In addition, last year's special report by UN human rights defenders who interviewed 60 Ukrainian prisoners of war after their release found that 39 of them, which is more than half, had been victims of sexual violence in Russian captivity. Sexual violence is a widespread, brutal weapon of Russian forces against both the Ukrainian military and civilians. It is used to intimidate and humiliate in an attempt to subdue. And that's why the issue of conflict-related sexual violence is extremely important today, particularly for Ukraine, and we as parliamentarians taking all possible measures to protect the victims of sexual violence. This is why last year Ukrainian Parliament, we will soon join European Union, so that's why I made a mistake. Our Parliament passed a law ensuring urgent reparations for victims of sexual violence related to Russian aggression against Ukraine because justice cannot wait. The law also stipulates that no amnesty can be granted to perpetrators committed genocide, crimes against humanity, and war crimes, inclusive of crimes of sexual and other forms of violence against women and girls. And finally, I would like to stress that the Ukrainian parliament continues harmonizing Ukrainian laws with international standards on women's rights in conflict and post-conflict situations, in particular the ratification of Istanbul Convention, which entered into force in 2022, and the Istanbul Convention was signed by Ukraine in 2011. So during our convocation, we succeeded to ratify the convention. Laws alone will not heal the wounds of war, but they can be a promise that we will not turn away, that we will not allow impunity, and that we will fight for justice as fiercely as our soldiers fight in the battlefield. Ukrainian women have already shown the world their strengths, and now the world must stand with them, ensuring their rights, dignity, and future are protected.
Thank you so much, Elena. You know, I remember when the war first started, not the full scale of war, but in the East, the women volunteered to be in combat, even though there were all kinds of proscriptions, prohibitions against what they were engaged in that regard. And they, in fact, did a study called the Invisible Battalion because they weren't regular. And it was the legislature that really, as you heard from her, that began to move on really ensuring that women soldiers in Ukraine get what they deserve in terms of the same kinds of status that male soldiers have. And that has improved greatly, and it's improved significantly because of the role of the legislature. So you've shown us both the face of war in your remarks, but also the critical role that legislators play as it relates clearly to women, peace, and security as well. We're going to turn now to the Honorable Raisa Jajuri. She is a member of the Bangsamoro Parliament and a Minister for Social Services and Development. She's a prominent human rights lawyer who played a vital role in the peace process as a consultant to the Moro Islamic Liberation Front. She also served as a member of the Bangsamoro Transition Commission. Raisa, we heard a lot during the Focal Points Network meeting, references to the Mindanao peace process and to the Bangsamoro Agreement. Tell us why the framework was really consistent with the Women, Peace, and Security agenda, particularly with respect to women-led the negotiations, their role in the negotiations, and how would you evaluate the Mindanao peace process from a gender lens? Because it is truly one of the excellent examples today of women's full participation in a negotiated peace process. So welcome.
Thank you, Madam Ambassador. Good afternoon, everyone. As mentioned, the Bangsamoro peace process, we've seen milestones on women, peace, and security, particularly in track 1, where you have women in the peace panel negotiating, well, on both sides. So you had, from the government side, you had a woman, one of the very few who signed a peace agreement in the whole world. And on the part of the Moro Islamic Liberation Front, this was also the first time that they included a woman in their delegation. So truly, the Bangsamoro peace process showed some very big strides towards in the matter of women's participation, particularly in peacemaking. And we can see that also in the content of the agreement. So if you look at the framework agreement on the Bangsamoro, together with the annexes of this mother document, there are provisions pertaining to non-discrimination of women, protection from violence, meaningful participation of women in the autonomous government that at that point was going to be created, among other things. So, and right now we are reaping the gains of that peace process. A law has been passed and creating this autonomous government. So taking off from the peace agreement where you had strong participation of women from both sides of the table, there have been laws that were passed by the transition government. This is the interim government, where we have enshrined and supported, strengthened, first, women's participation in governance. We have a local governance code and an electoral code that are very clear on women's participation. Whereas in the national level, we don't have, the law is a bit silent on women participation in political exercises. We have in our laws a certain quota for nomination of political parties. There's also the requirement of having a women's agenda for all political parties that would register to participate in the regional elections. And we have one of the first laws that we passed was the creation of a Bangsamoro Women Commission that is now tasked to be the primary policy-making body on gender issues in the Bangsamoro, and to monitor and mainstream these policies in the autonomous government. And in the composition of the autonomous government, we have a parliamentary form, which is quite different from what we have in the national level, where it's really more of presidential. So it's quite interesting how the intergovernmental relations structure has been operating. But within the Bangsamoro government, in the parliament, we still have, we have not reached that critical mass. We are all appointed, by the way, and there will be new elections, the first elections in the region in October of this year. And hopefully those provisions in the local governance code as well as in the electoral code that we have passed would empower women to be part of the nomination process, enshrine the agenda for women, not at the time of their governance, but even while they are forming their political parties and presenting themselves with platforms of government. So hopefully we have more women in the regular government who will be elected. By the way, one other provision that is quite new in the Philippine arena would be an anti-political dynasty provision in the electoral code. Yes. Please explain. Okay, that's a provision in a constitution, but unfortunately, since the constitution was enacted or ratified by the people, there has been no law passed pertaining to or prohibiting political dynasties. But in the BARM, we were able to put that in our local governance code as well as in the electoral code. So everybody is watching whether this will work, and hopefully that also influences the national government to look into that constitutional mandate to break political dynasties and hopefully democratize elections and bringing more women into fore in terms of political participation. So I would say, if there's a question on how I assess it, I think we've made great strides stemming from the negotiations in the process of negotiating, but also in the content, the quality of the peace agreement. I would say there are strong platforms that were already used by the transition government towards hopefully stronger positions against gender discrimination and empowering the women. We have made great strides, but there's still a long way to go. We're still working on that, and hopefully the new Bangsamoro government can build on this, the bricks that we have laid down during the transition government.
Thank you so much. I think it's so interesting coming out of a very inclusive model, Women, Peace, and Security peace process, to now hear from you how the government structure that came out of that is operating, particularly with the Parliament, what you've done and what you still need to do and want to do. But it's a great case study of beyond the peace process, what happens. And again, the role of the Parliament is all important. We're going to turn now to the Honorable Meenakshi Lekhi. She's a prominent Indian politician and former Minister of State for External Affairs and Culture. A lawyer, she's practiced in the Supreme Court of India and the Delhi High Court, and is a formidable advocate for social justice. She has been involved in landmark cases, like advocating for the commissioning of women in the Indian Armed Forces, another mention of the security sector and women. She's played a vital role in drafting significant legislation, including sexual harassment of women in the workplace bill and women's reservation bill. And there's so much, Meenakshi, that you've been involved in. It's too much in an introduction to mention everything. But it will come out, I'm sure, in what you have to tell us. So as a parliamentarian, you have made these admirable achievements in this legislation, really seminal legislation in many ways, and also in changing the regulations in the Indian Parliament to ensure that more than 30% of committee members on the security be women parliamentarians. These are not easy things to do. So give us a sense of what it took in terms of your strategy to be able to achieve these outcomes.
Thank you very much, Ambassador, for such a lovely introduction. I don't know whether I deserve it or not, but thank you. So far as strategy is concerned, I think half the time in democracy, we have to understand who our electorate is, and women are our electorates. We get elected because women vote for us. But do we use that electorate to identify with their problems? One is identifying the problem. Two is having the strategy in place, how to overcome that problem. Three is bringing that subject back to women with a solution. So half the time, small things, access to sanitation, access to clean water, access to clean energy, access to healthcare, access to having a property in your name, having a household in your name. Now, these are not struggles of only deprived section, but these are struggles even in well-off communities. Even in developed world, we see these discrimination that how much property is owned by women versus how much property is owned by men, how many bank accounts are with men, how many bank accounts are with women, participation rates. So strategy is very simple, that you identify the problem, try to address it, and bounce it back to the electorate, and make them stakeholder in the governance. Once the women as a group are stakeholders in the governance, they vote for you. and they continue to vote for you. So I will say in past 10 years, and as you said, been a lawyer for more than 30 years, and during this process, country has seen tremendous changes. I can go back and say, even as a law student, as a student in college, we had, and I'm very glad my friend from Mansanaro explained that how difficult it is to get women on board in the Islamic world, especially in peacemaking. So we had a case way back in 1985, Shabanu, it was famous by Shabanu, triple talaq, that 3 times a man could just say talaq talaq and wife has to get out of the home. And in return, she only got what alimony was decided, meher we call it, at the time of marriage. If a woman's been married, say, for 40 years, 50 years, and she's reached 70 years of age, what was decided 50 years ago is obviously not adequate to look after her in later period. So law of maintenance worked for everyone except this lady who's reached her prime age. And that time, way back in 1985, I was in my second year of college. And when one saw that youngsters' zeal to get justice for the deprived section, and you're very idealistic at that age, was one experience which I carried for a long time. And we had a minister that time, who's presently a governor of a state right now. That gentleman was the Deputy Minister of Internal Affairs, Home Affairs actually. He resigned from the post, saying that government of the day was not protecting the Muslim women, and he himself was a Muslim. He was my, as a youngster, I kind of related to him. Arif Muhammad Khan is his name, and I related to him immediately, and I said, that's the way men need to behave. That's the way men need to come across as representative of women, because finally, if society understands that women issues are not just women issues, these are societal issues, and no man can survive without a woman, because he'll not be born if there was no woman in the first place. 2, he will not be able to produce the progeny without a woman. 3, the love in life or the good things in life do not come without a woman. So protecting that section is as much his responsibility as that of the women. And I'm very happy that we have one amongst us sitting on the panel and several in the audience, because issues of women need to be addressed by men, because I always say, I said, you don't talk to the converts. Women talking amongst themselves makes no change at all, because we will always converge, we always know the subject, and we hardly have any difference of opinion. No matter which part of the world we come from, women will not find a difference of opinion, because we are all stakeholders in peace, in security, in health, in education. But I think men need to be co-opted as part of the strategy. And when we have very strong men representing us, the job gets done. And I will give you this example, like I gave you the example of Arif Muhammad Khan way back in 1985. When our party came to power, which is 30 years later, 25 years later, at that time, though this is a mandate of the Constitution, but this was mandate observed in defiance, then in acceptance by the previous governments, because they saw this as an appeasement politics, that you're appeasing the men from a particular community and not addressing the issue, so that community and the men in the lead keep voting for you. But when this government came to power, one of the promises we made was we will remove triple talaq. Why? Because women are impacted. We brought it, we removed the triple talaq, and women as stakeholders, and men also as stakeholders from the community whose daughters have been wrongfully divorced, boys whose mothers have been wrongfully divorced, came on your side. So it's how you pitch your subject. So the moment you make the subject absolutely clear to the society, make it logical, make it employable, and make it sensitive, you have won the race. And that's exactly the strategy in every other subject. And I'm very grateful that our Prime Minister made this as a tagline, and not just a tagline, but implemented it as a policy, that forget talking about women empowerment. No more conversation about women empowerment. Is going to be women-led development. So every developmental process, whether it's loans, it's assurance, it's banking, it's property, it's representation, it's women bill, it has to be women-led development, and you see the impact. The impact is at the grassroots to the top, and that's what makes all the difference. That's why I say we always need to co-opt with strong men who can be our voices, and we should be able to lead the pack. And unless that space is provided to women to lead the pack, all the effort will go waste. And we will be talking in a room full of women only, which is not the strategy, which is not the right strategy.
Well, thank you so much for those important comments. Thankfully, we are not just talking to a room full of women here, but we've got so many male champions who agree that these are issues not confined to women, but to the kind of world we want to see, one of peace and security, and it takes all of us to do that. And thank you, too, for your outline of what it takes to be a successful legislator on these critical issues. We're going to go back now to our friend, Mr. Akamoto. And let me ask you, as not just a member of the Women, Peace and Security Parliamentary Network, but as the former Vice Minister for Foreign Affairs, how do you see the role of Japan today in terms of efforts to advance WPS?
Thank you, Madam Ambassador. First of all, I'm so impressed by your speech, sharing that how much you seriously try to improve the quality of the peacemaking process, having women more in the process. With Madam's question, Japan is unique in that we experienced many national disasters, both earthquake and typhoons. We Japanese government and ministries tried to prevent the disasters, but it's happened. And once it's happened, the people have to move out to the shelter. Typically, it's school gyms. And it's typically empty. But what we experienced, and that was unfortunate, is that number of deaths directly caused by the natural disaster is fewer than the number of deaths actually caused or deaths in the shelter caused by the lower level of the living conditions. So it is highly important to improve the quality of the shelter. How we trying to make it happen is a lot of skill set and knowledge from the rich experiences that we experienced before. At the local level of the government, we have many women staff they have been trying to improve the quality of the disaster management. But these experiences, skill set, knowledge can be spread it out to our friends' countries in order to contribute from our end to your side. But we are still in the phase of the improvement. So we also need to learn from you guys, but this is what we have as a Japanese unique condition of the countries. But we need to have anyway, as I said, we have 37 parliamentarians in the network. And the number of parliamentarians here in Japan is about 700. 37 is not many enough. I will try to make it happen to double, triples, in order to have every single Japanese parliamentarian can be a member of the network. I will try to happen. By the way, this network is strongly supported by the parliamentarian Kamikawa, who is former Minister of the Foreign Affairs. And without her efforts, this parliamentarians network couldn't happen. So thanks to her.
So you just, all of these people have just heard you say that your goal is going to be to really enhance the ranks of this network. So I don't know, we may gather again and have you back and see how the numbers have grown. But anyway, I think one of the most important things that Mr. Akamoto said is the reference to disaster risk reduction and the role that has been played in this country, because it has been beset by natural disasters and has really formulated learnings over time as to how to cope, which is comparable in many ways to what is needed in relief and recovery after wars. One second, and I think that's something that we can learn, and you can really take more to the global stage, because it's something we've got to work on.
Just to make sure that I'm not just talking about natural disaster, but with our rich experiences, we think we will be able to contribute to the like Ukraine reconstruction process. That's how we are able to make the process smoother and process make happy to many people, including women, kids, and elderly.
Yes. Nakshi?
Ambassador, with your permission. India, like International Solar Alliance, has an initiative as part of the Foreign Policy Network under the UN body. And we call it CDRI, Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure. And we have put various countries on board. And the idea is that with sustainable development goals and several other issues, this is a positive coalition which includes that infrastructure, disaster resilient infrastructure is what we all need, and we all have to learn from each other, especially Japan. I would request that since the minister has been a former Minister of External Affairs, you could push your government to be part of CDRI network also.
There are a lot of commitments being made here this afternoon. Elena, there's a lot of talk today, expectation about an eventual peace process in Ukraine to end the war. How do you see the role of women both in preparing as well as participating eventually in such a process? Because I know it's something on the minds of many of us.
Thank you, Ms. Ambassador, for the question. By the way, I would like to add that in Ukrainian parliament, we also have a caucus named Equal Opportunities. Not only women belong to this caucus, the members of this caucus, and this caucus has been established in 2011 or 2012, so it has been running through 3 convocations of the parliament already. With regards to peace and peace negotiations, imagine a mother waiting for the news of her son in the front line. Imagine a wife counting days since her husband was taken into captivity. And imagine a young girl growing up in a world where air raid sirens are part of her daily life. Without any doubt, Ukrainian women survive for peace, not as an abstract idea, strive for peace, not as an abstract idea, but as a necessity for their survival. At the same time, during the Russian aggression, Ukrainian women suffered a lot of grief. Many women paid the ultimate price, that of their lives and health, and the lives and health of their loved ones. Tens of thousands of Ukrainian women have lost their loved ones at the front line or are waiting for them from Russian captivity. And for us, for Ukrainian women, peace is not just an absence of war, it is justice, security, and future that we can trust. So whenever we talk about peace, we must remember the price paid. And that is why today, not only as a parliamentarian, but also as a woman, I want to talk about just peace, one that honors these sacrifices and ensures that they are not in vain. And for Ukrainians, justice means first and foremost that the war will never come into our lives again. It is about sense of security for every woman, for all of us. And for this, we need strong Ukraine and security guarantees. That's why President Zelensky and Ukrainian parliamentarians speak about peace through strength, the approach that is important, vital for us today. What does it mean from Ukrainian perspective? It is about strong Ukraine and strong partners. After all, Russia will not commit aggression knowing that Ukraine has enough of its own resources to repel it, and its partners are ready to provide prompt and necessary support to Ukraine. This applies to strengthening Ukraine's combat capabilities right now, to continue military operations to repel Russian attacks, to hit military targets on the territory of Russia and temporarily occupied territories, military targets, and to weaken Russia's defense capabilities and offensive potential. We call for this to be done by supplying military assistance, including long-range capabilities, investing in the Ukrainian defense industry, strengthening Ukrainian air defense, and lifting restrictions on the use of long-range weapons throughout the Russian territory and of Ukraine, temporary occupied territory of Ukraine. Another important component of our country's security is the implementation of security agreements, of which there are already 28 agreements. And of this, in the complex, this is the complex which is necessary. Russia must be aware about catastrophic consequences it will face if it will attempt to repeat its armed aggression. And that's why we're talking about deploying a comprehensive non-nuclear strategic deterrence package on the territory of Ukraine, which will be sufficient to protect Ukraine from any military threat from Russia. And peace is not only won on the battlefield, but also at the negotiation table. And here is strength is just crucial. That's why peace through strength means ensuring Ukraine is never left vulnerable again. And for Ukraine, the issues of potential negotiations on ending the war and security guarantees are closely linked, because without reliable guarantees, any agreement concluded with Russia will only be a precondition for future repeated aggression. And speaking of security guarantees, we are primarily talking about inviting Ukraine to join NATO. We're not talking about membership in times of war, and we understand that this path may take long. But we need interim security solutions, and the invitation to NATO is one of them. And the invitation will strengthen us at our negotiation position and will send clear message to Russia that Russia has no veto on NATO enlargement. And at this point, coming back to the role of women parliamentarians, not NATO, cooperation with NATO continues on the parliamentary track, and women's leadership plays a significant role here. For example, women are responsible for Euro-Atlantic and European integration. This is Vice Prime Minister Olga Stefanishyna. And also we have a woman serving as ambassador of Ukraine to NATO. We have also many women running foreign missions. And together with the women parliamentarians, this is very strong force working to bring Ukraine closer to NATO. Meanwhile, within the parliamentarian committee, as you mentioned, I'm chairing the subcommittee on defense procurement, exercising parliamentary control in the process of transforming the defense procurement system of Ukraine in accordance with its principles and standards of NATO member states. I participated with my fellow colleagues in NATO Strategic Defense Procurement Review, which resulted into recommendations for modifying Ukraine's defense system. And these recommendations were presented and agreed upon the NATO Washington Summit last year. Thus, we're actively moving towards achieving interoperability with NATO, and not only in defense procurement. And generally speaking, as you also mentioned, Ukrainian military diplomacy has a female face today. Let's just recall our First Lady, Olena Zelenska. She impressed the whole world with her speech at the US Congress, calling for more military assistance to Ukraine. She became the first wife of a foreign president addressing to the United States Congress. And my fellow parliamentarians and I used to jointly call ourselves Women's Battalion at the beginning of the full-scale war in spring 2022, as we went to expel Russia from the Council of Europe. This is the only organization that expelled Russia from its members, and we advocated support for Ukraine at meetings with Boris Johnson in London, with Emmanuel Macron in Paris, and Pope Francis in Vatican. And Women's Battalion keeps working with the numerous delegations to such international organizations as PACE, NATO PA, OSCE PA, and IPU. We keep moving critical initiatives forward. For example, within our work in PACE, we managed to facilitate the establishment of the Register of Damage and Compensation Mechanism, and the establishment of a special tribunal for the crime of aggression to come soon. We advocate for release of prisoners of war and civilian hostages, as well as for return of all deported Ukrainian children. And these issues are at the top of these organizations' agendas for almost 3 years already, and we wouldn't stop until justice is served. We keep on advocating for support for Ukraine and just peace throughout parliamentary diplomacy. This is why I'm here today speaking to you, not just as parliamentarian, but also as a woman who believes in justice. And Ukraine fight is not just ours, it is fight for the world we want to live in, because to us, peace is not just the silence of guns. It is the triumph of justice, the return of our loved ones, and the future we dream for our children.
Thank you. And I'm sure the battalion that you talked about will be in full engagement when that peace process is put in place as well, and moves forward. Raisa, we know that your community is going through relief and recovery at this point. What are the challenges in that to women and children especially? What has to be overcome or dealt with?
Okay, I would have to say that while I gave a picture of a very good process that we have undergone, starting from the peace process towards the implementation of the organic law for the autonomous region, we face still a lot of challenges. Just like most, if not all societies, we do have deep-seated norms that prevent more women and girls to participate in governance. So while you do have those laws, we still have to do more than just enacting them, because we do face barriers. We do face violence against women, child marriages, among other things. So I think these challenges are still there, and as legislators, we can work on the laws and making sure that these laws do become realities in the future through implementation by government agencies, but also stakeholders. At the same time, since we are an interim government, we do want to see the regular government, as I said, building on the gains of the peace agreement and the transition government. Right now, we do have good women role models in the parliament. Women take on very critical positions as deputy speakers, floor leaders. They actually do a lot of work directing the flow of these laws that are being passed by the parliament. So that's one of the roles that I think Bangsamoro women parliamentarians contribute to women, peace, and security, inspiring others that this is something that can be done even in a small autonomous region in the Philippines, and hopefully that also inspires the rest of the country. We do have some ministries that are working on mentorship of younger public servants so that they take on stronger roles in governance, not as politicians, but those who work day and night ensuring that government services reach our communities, among other things. So I would say that, as I said, we have made great strides, but we still have to work on many things in the Bangsamoro, and we hope that this women, peace, and security movement will keep an eye on the Bangsamoro, but also get inspiration from it. Thank you.
Thank you, and it shows the importance of meeting the kinds of challenges that present themselves in relief and recovery, and it takes time. Meenakshi, let me just conclude this round by asking you about the criticism that often comes to women, peace, and security as being a Western idea or a global North idea, and some conservatives around the world say it doesn't apply to our part of the world or us. How do you respond to those criticisms, and why is it important to respond to them?
I think it's important to respond to such criticism because women, peace, and security, if you look around the areas which have been under conflict, as the slide presented in the beginning of the session, by His Excellency, the representative from the Philippine Embassy, showcased that 170 conflicts have happened across the globe. Most of these conflicts have happened in, say, Middle East, Africa, Asia, Europe. By Ukraine's involvement, it's Europe. So Europe was somewhere insular in the recent past. After World War II, Europe was insular from the conflicts. With Ukraine and Russia, Europe is getting impaired. But all over the world, rest of the globe, there is conflict happening. So women, peace, and security is imperative, both for North and South, for the simple reason that this time in G20, for example, India incorporated the agenda of Global South on the table, showcasing to the world that we being the bridge between the two. For the simple reason that Indian economy, we are number 3 in terms of GDP, but we also have a very large population to look after. Thus, we represent both the North and the South. We represent East by virtue of being an Eastern civilization, and we represent the West by our institutional mechanism, democracy, banking, Supreme Court, law and order, rule-based order. With all that, we represent the countries of the West also. So we are in ideal position to talk about all these things. And thus, the conclusion is that the North cannot exist without South on board, because most human resource and economic resource vests with the South, Global South. The technology and the control mechanism or the learning capacity vests with the North. What will you do with your learning capacity and technology unless you have resources from the South? But the South also needs to be looked after and provided for. So global agenda of South and North being 2 poles needs to be met somewhere so that everybody gets the warmth. Equator, we need that equidistance from both rather than having extremes, positions. I always say Buddhism has a concept of middle path. Middle path is to bring the two together to find a solution to the problem. And most conflict in the South, if I may say, I'm not concluding that they are caused by North, but I'm hinting that there are factors and policies involved which North has a control over. And thus, the North and the South divide is a false divide. It's a global agenda. Women, as I said, meet across party lines, across geographical diversity, across country structures. Women have common agenda. Peace, they are the biggest stakeholders because as a maternal instinct, you care for children, you care for family, you care for old age, you have a caring temperament, nurturing temperament which God has given you across animal kingdom. And animal kingdom, not just humans, but across animal kingdom. Security becomes imperative because it's only when nations, societies, and people are secure that the nature and care can flourish. Economies, whether it's the example of Europe or Japan itself, the prosperity flourished because there was peace around. And for that, security becomes imperative. And thus I go back that this narration needs to change, global North, global South. The narration is we are all equal stakeholders in keeping peace and security, and women are the biggest stakeholders. The communication on both sides, the North side, which normally tries to like handing it down, that we are very peaceful and you are the ones who are going through all this, is wrong. And the South, which in spite of its efforts is not able to communicate at a higher level, that look, this much of work we have put in for the peace, security, and women agenda, which probably North is missing out. There has to be greater communication. One example I'm going to leave you with. How many people in global North, so-called economically developed nations would understand that in India, 48% of women are in STEM. 48%. How many will understand this figure? And everyone will pitch, oh, India, women empowerment. You know, all our satellites and Mars missions are being handled by women. All the missile missions are handled by women. All the ISRO scientists, you'll find women. Mathematicians, you'll find women. But how many people would buy this narrative or know that narrative? I blame myself in the sense that we don't talk about our achievements. I blame the global North for not being receptible to these changes which are happening in the world and being that high chair syndrome needs to also be changed, that maybe there are certain policy changes which global north needs to make within their societies so that women in the north are also equal participants. There are many places they are lagging behind. So we are all equal stakeholders. That's my conclusion.
Thank you. Meenakshi, you've got the last word.
So I must say the very first answer which I gave, I'll share my own experience, and that experience is we had women policy right from 90s, a national policy on women rights, and that is my youth when I started working and all. And 2000 plus, 2002 or 3, I remember being taken by the woman and child minister who later became our speaker to the finance minister. And I was part of the delegation, the younger person amongst others. And the dismissive look of the then finance minister when we asked for gender budgeting, I still remember that, you know, and she just nudged me like this, that start speaking. So I started saying, this is what women need, this is what we want, and please put it in the budget. And he looked at us and he just scoffed. Okay. And have your cup of tea and leave. And we left. Finally, the years passed by, governments changed. When we got into our government, I must share this story. The budget has now increased to 6.8%. I mean, 6.8% in terms of the budgeting allocation. Increment is about 36%. 1% of the GDP has actually gone to women. And the trick was in separating women from children and family budgeting. So what usually used to happen was that women will be clubbed with family welfare and health and everything. So I would normally, my stand, and in fact that has been one of the reasons when sustainability and women, some people tried to connect the two. I stood my ground and I said, sorry, this connection is not going to happen because sustainability gets its own budget, whether in UN or locally or in the governments. Women budget is exclusively for women, and that cannot be taken into any more subject. As far as women participation is concerned, 50% of the population are women, so 50% participation in every field should be of women, including sustainability, but budget exclusive to women cannot be touched, number one. Number two, whatever we do at the policy level usually is done by bureaucracy. No malice to bureaucracy, but bureaucracy, if I can say, is disconnected with the ground. They are sitting in their offices. People who are connected with the ground are the politicians. So political representatives need to have a stake in that, and they need to be the voices. And they need to take women, like I'm saying, my then minister, who was handling the Department of Women and Child, had taken me along with rest of a bunch of women. And subsequently, today we have a full-fledged cabinet ministry for women and child development. It's a WCD is a separate ministry. The more important point is when you make policies, you do allocation of budgets, they need to be monitored. And monitoring process is the parliamentary agenda. Every parliamentarian needs to monitor not just allocation, but implementation process, because usually it's the parliaments which are doing that working. And in all your women and child committees, or family welfare committees, different countries will have different names. You should have 33% men as partners. Please ensure that it doesn't become an exclusive women-only committee. It should have minimum 33% of men in that committee. That's how you'll bring the change. And that's our own experiment and our own learning. I would say my own learning, because for some reason, one has been, I mean, I've done several other things, but been part of this also. And of course, you need role models. And if those role models are men, I think it works very well for us. When they start saying, no, this got to be done. Sometimes I feel I'm not blaming the men. I think they are a little shy on speaking on these subjects. That shyness needs to be removed, that if men come across as sensitive women, as sensitive beings, it will be like, oh, he's not man enough, he's not macho enough, which is wrong. I always say men need to have a better PR of showcasing their sensitive side, and women also need a better PR showcasing their tough sides. And that's how we'll bring the balance.
Excellent. Well, we do come to the conclusion, I think, from the experiences that have been relayed right here, that there is a strong connection between parliamentarians, between legislators, and women, peace, and security. So let's work together to strengthen that proposition and at the same time strengthen the prospects for greater peace and security in our world. So thank our distinguished panel, and we'll go forward with that resolution leaving this room.
ありがとうございました。本日ご登壇いただきました講演者の皆様に心より感謝申し上げます。講演者の皆様がご退出されます。皆様、今一度温かい拍手をお願いいたします。ありがとうございました。以上をもちまして、本日のシンポジウムを終了いたします。ご退場の際はお忘れ物にご注意ください。同時通訳レシーバーは出口にて回収いたしますので、ご返却をお願いいたします。後日、アンケートのお願いをメールにてお送りいたしますので、ぜひご協力ください。本日は長時間にわたりご参加いただき、誠にありがとうございました。どうぞお気をつけてお帰りくださいませ。